What's up, everyone? This is Spacetown. I decided to make a video about a thing that I did relatively recently. And, I know I keep promising track breakdowns. This isn't that yet, but I'm just going to film this and try to edit it pretty quickly and see what happens. And then we will get to the track breakdown after this or before this or however I want to edit these things together. But I just wanted to record this so that I had it recorded and I could work on this on the computer instead of talking live in front of you. You might have heard about this course at UCSD called Blacktronica. It is a course or a class taught by King Britt. He has done a lot of things, has worked with a bunch of people. He's just been around for a while and is quite the prolific musician and DJ. And so, he has started a course and is working at UCSD as an assistant professor. And the main, it seems like the main course that he's teaching is this course called Blacktronica. Blacktronica is a course that details the immense contributions of Black artists to all of music and basically all of modern music as well. The course takes an Afrofuturist perspective on these artists, and I think that that's an important distinction to make, right? Because when we talk about the way that Black people have contributed to music, we just think about the ways that, like, oh, Black people are musicians in that they play instruments and they sing and they contribute to the Western musical canon in a traditional way, right? And I think that the distinction and the designation of the Afrofuturist perspective is very, very important, because Afrofuturism is an aesthetic and kind of like a cultural idea around the intersection of the African diaspora with science and technology, right? And it is a very distinctly Black tradition of technology and of science. And the fact that the course has an Afrofuturist perspective and is taking and thinking about the contributions of Black people toward music in an Afrofuturist lens means that the course is necessarily going to be different than a traditional music history course taught by any other person, right? And those courses, the contributions of Black artists are usually token. They're very tokenized, and they're kind of meant. Black musicians are like a footnote in these music history courses. They'll talk about rock and roll, right? And they'll talk about Elvis and the Beatles and all of that stuff, and not at all mention the fact that Black people were making that music first. The same thing with techno. To me, and this is coming from someone who hasn't taken the course and is actually not able to take the course because I'm not a student at UCSD, I think that having that Afrofuturist perspective, not just Black perspective, like very distinctly Afrofuturist, that is an important perspective, and it flavors and shapes the entire trajectory of the course. And that's what I think is so interesting about the course, is that it's not just, what has happened and what Black people are and Black people's history. It is taking these cultural artifacts and these cultural ideas and giving them the sense that there had been a future imagined with these works, right? So instead of just Black people made this music because that's the music that they made, it is taking on the idea of Black people imagined a future in which, things were different, right? And that's just so important when it comes to thinking and talking about art, music, culture, because these futures are something that everyone is speculating. Everyone has these perspectives on what the future looks like. And very often when we talk about minority cultures and minority peoples, we squash the visions of their art in a way that prevents them from moving at all, right? They just remain this static piece of history as opposed to a people that is shaping the very way we think and listen to music, right? And so that's why the Afrofuturist lens is so important to this course. The course itself seems really large in its scale. Again, I don't know because I haven't taken it and I can't take it. But the course seems very large in scale, going from the roots of Black music to kind of modern times and tracing the histories of these sounds that you hear in modern pop music and modern music of all forms, and tracing them back to their roots in Black music. And it has a large number of interviews with these artists that have been doing the work. Some of the ones cited in the recent resident advisor piece that was written on the course: Herbie Hancock, Honey Dijon, Goldie, Jeff Mills, actually, which is, my personal, the one that I would have liked to see the most. Also, Toki Monsta, as a representative of the beat scene in LA, which I thought was a really cool shout out. I don't know if No Such Thing is there, but maybe if you're listening to this somehow, King Brit, go get No Such Thing. Then the Asian American beat scene, music scene will be complete for me, I guess. And yeah, this seems like such a cool course, man. I super wish that I was able to take this course, and not just that, but I wish that I was able to take this course back when I was at UCSD. I'm going to go over this later, but it is a big thing that this course exists at UCSD. When I was looking at information on this course, I found that there was an exhibit at the Geisel Library that I wanted to go visit, and I saw that there was a club experience affiliated with the event. It's billed as a way to kind of experience these sounds live in a way that you'll actually be able to listen to them in a non-theoretical or non-academic context. So this event was actually open to all people in San Diego and outside of San Diego, I'm assuming. And yeah, this is what I thought was going to be the closest way for me to get into the class without actually being a student at UC San Diego. So I decided to go. Yeah, I got myself a ticket, which was free. I think they happen bi-weekly, according to the Instagram of the Blacktronica course. So this wasn't the only one. You'll get to go to more of them if you are in San Diego or outside and you're just visiting. I decided to go to this one, put it down on the calendar. And the day comes, it's Friday, March 3rd, and I was a little bit hesitant, actually. I was wavering a little bit on whether I actually wanted to go to this or not, mostly because I was a little worried that I was kind of going to take away from the experience for the actual students of the class. I didn't want to have a situation where I was like the weird old guy at the college party event thing. And, I had gone roller skating earlier in the day for longer than I expected. I roller skate now, so that's something that is happening. So, I was a little tired, a little worried that I was going to ruin the vibes for people, but I decided that I wanted to go, not just because I wanted to see the event, but I wanted to see how UC San Diego had changed. I hadn't seen the campus in what seems like 10 years or so. It felt like a decade since I had last seen the campus. And, UC San Diego was such a formative experience for me in my life, just in the way that it was where I developed my creative practice. I met my wife there. I was there to try and learn about how to make video games, even though they didn't really have a video game program. And I kind of got sucked into this other thing of making music and playing shows and releasing music independently, all because the environment of UC San Diego was there and was kind of, if not willing, at least able to support that, right? To foster that kind of creativity as I progressed in my own creative practice with making music. The show itself, let's talk about the actual event. I didn't know that King Britt himself was actually going to be playing, but had kind of thought of it as an event for the students of the class, where you just get to listen to the music in a really cool space. That's basically what the event was. It was a DJ set by King Britt. I didn't stay that long because of my kid. I wanted to get back and not burden my wife too much with trying to put him to bed too early. But I managed to stay for about an hour and a half or so, and it was cool. It wasn't the most hyped event I've ever seen, right? But I think that what was really cool to see was the number of students at the show. And it was cool to see them because it reminded me of a time where you could be totally sober and just listen to good music and be excited about it. At least that's what the vibes seemed to me. I don't know if these students were pre-gaming before the before the show, but it was cool. Everyone was dancing, everyone was having a good time. When I got there, it wasn't filled out. The space hadn't filled out quite as much as it probably could have, but people were dancing and having a great time, and that's always cool to see with an event at UC San Diego. One of the biggest things that I had trouble with when I was a student at UC San Diego was there would be all of these events around the campus with music and stuff like that, and I always thought that the crowds were so lackluster, I guess is the word I'd use. It's the kind of people who need to be super drunk in order to dance or even move around when a band is playing. But now it seems like most of them have moved to the Bay Area and left San Diego alone. So that's that's what seems to have happened. It was a relatively low-key, chill event, but it sounded really good. And King Britt's selections were really, really good. He kept calling it early vibes, and it was early vibes, but everything in the early vibes, quote unquote, section was fantastic. And it made me really want to roller skate again. And I spent some time Shazamming some of those songs because I didn't know them. It was obviously a DJ set from someone who has been doing this shit for a long time, and it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see like a competent professional person who knows what they're doing, and has a very discreet and a very prominent identity that they can just go forward with a DJ set and just know what they're doing and be confident in what they're putting out there. So that was cool. It was a nice event. So yeah, that was the event itself. It was really cool. I would recommend going to it if you get a chance to. You're not going to get everything that you could if you're not a student in the class, but in its absolute lowest level, it is a DJ set from someone who knows exactly what they're doing and has been doing it for a long time and is really good in a place that sounds really good. So that's good. That's what you want to see. One of the things that I thought was really cool about the space as it was laid out was that the DJ was in the center of the room and not in one corner of the room. I feel like one of the most frustrating things about the ways that like raves and DJ sets happen these days is that they usually put the DJ booth like on the stage, where the and the stage is usually like in the back of the venue. So it kind of forces this very annoying and frustrating hierarchy of proximity to the DJ, which I'm not a huge fan of. If DJing is about kind of having everyone experience the music as this collective unit in a way that like allows everyone to vibe at the same time, you'd either put the DJ at the center so that everyone can see the DJ equally at all times, or you would kind of remove the DJ from the experience and have just like a room of music, right? I feel like people have trouble with the latter version conceptually. So, having the DJ booth in the middle of the room is something that I feel really helped the vibes. Also, the fact that there's a giant disco ball helped, but It was also the first time I feel like I almost got motion sickness at a DJ set, because I haven't been to very many venues where disco balls are used in their intended way. So that was interesting. Yeah. When I was coming up as a, I'm not anywhere, right? I'm not like a super famous professional musician. So take this with a grain of salt. But when I was developing my creative practice at UC San Diego, I feel like so much of my experience had been being someone looking for some kind of context or looking for some kind of community that I could never really find at UC San Diego. And a lot of these were either circumstances of the time or just people weren't interested in the stuff that I was interested in. I had studied classical piano for about like 13 years at the time that I entered UC San Diego. My classical piano background is mostly my piano teacher desperately trying to get me interested in how classical musicians worked, and the contexts around these musicians, and how they were informed by each other and things like that. But, it's classical music, man. The DJ club was something that I had been interested in. Like, I had wanted to get into DJing and turntablism since I saw the documentary Scratch in high school. It was always something that I was really interested in, and I wanted to be a DJ or wanted to get into it. So I thought that joining the DJ club, it was called DVC, the DJs and Vinyl Files Club, which is bananas to think that they were vinyl files at the time. So the DVC was the club that was on campus at the time. I really wanted to get into it because they were that was the only organization that had the equipment that you could learn to DJ on. All of the equipment at the time was really expensive, and it didn't really make sense for me to like lug around like a set of 1200s in my one, in my room, taking up like an entire desk. So, DVC was basically the only place where you could practice DJing, right? They only had 2 sets of turntables, and so it was really difficult to develop that practice, to like practice DJing. And on top of that, most of the members of the organization were not fun to be around. In the late aughts, early tens, the vibe around electronic music was definitely weird. It was kind of EDM hitting its peak, or close to hitting its peak. It was a couple years removed. The idea of the a massive rave was just getting prominence, right? So DVC didn't seem super interested in fostering like a community of DJs that were all learning and pushing each other to become better DJs via track selection or technique or whatever. It seemed like they were mostly interested in emulating the massive rave ideas that were going around at the time. And so most of their time was spent putting on these like really big events on campus where they would kind of pretend essentially to play Coachella with a bunch of people on these big stages. And so it was cool if that was what you were into, but I was never, I just wanted to learn to DJ, man. And so for me, I was trying to find my like little niche of DJing. Then I got really into chiptune because I wanted to DJ chiptune. I wanted to take this like weird video game music and DJ it for people, but it turns out that weird video game music is made in way completely different BPMs. So yeah, instead of DJing it, I decided to just make my own chiptune. There weren't that many people at UC San Diego that were really into chiptune at the time. So my experience it was kind of hard to find that community at UCSD, and so most of my music experience and most of my experience making and performing music and being interested in music at UCSD had been one of like looking for a community or looking for some kind of context or culture where I don't think there was one, or if there was, I was just not looking in the right places and things like that. And kind of thinking back on it now, I wish that there had been, right? It feels like it's all of history to me now, but I've only kind of come to understand just how influenced all modern music is by black music. I've only come to that like in the last 6 years or so, I think. Like it definitely hasn't been something that I've known all the time, right? And yet all of the music that I wanted to make, right? All of the music that I was interested in, hip hop, turntablism, dance music, house music, even chiptune music, right? Even the idea of taking technologies that weren't intended to make music or weren't intended to make this kind of music and making this kind of music out of it, all of this has been informed by black music and black musicians. So it's only something that I'm in retrospect realizing, and I think that it's really important to state, to like think about all of this stuff. But going back to UCSD, it was really cool to see the changes. It was really fun to reminisce in the nostalgia. But it also kind of made me a little bummed out just by thinking about how I could have developed if I had had something like this when I was a student at UCSD, right? I think that this was made all the more palpable by the fact that we had these events happen at UCSD in 2010, collectively referred to as Black Winter. That was kind of spurred on by this event, an off-campus event hosted by a bunch of fraternities and stuff like that, called the Compton Cookout. And it was an event where people were supposed to like come in with like big stereotype like costumes and things like that. It was obviously in super horrible taste, right? It's not a thing that was ever something that you should be doing or want to do or anything. But the fact that it happened at UCSD, which was, UCSD, there were not that many black people at UCSD when I went, right? It was like white and Asian people that I was interacting with most of the time at UCSD. There just like was not a very large black population, black student population at UCSD. So the fact that you take that environment and then have an event that is specifically designed to make fun of black people, and it was really horrible. So it would be one thing if it ended with this Compton Cookout event, right? But that seems to trigger this weird wave of racist things happening on campus. After this happened, right, the Koala, I'm 100% going to make this association. DVC, that club, the DJ's club, shared offices with the Koala. The Koala was a college paper that was like, I think the Koala was trying to be the Onion, but instead of trading in humor and wit, it just was racist, I think. Racist and sexist. And so the paper covered this event obviously favorably. The Koala covered this in a news broadcast that was broadcast on this like TV station that we had. I think it was like public access. And on this broadcast, the editor-in-chief, I think, used the N-word to refer to black UCSD students. After that, a bunch of nooses were found hanging in various areas of UCSD. So this was horrible, right? This whole thing, right? All of these events were really, really, really bad. I'm not going to make any concessions there, right? Just this whole thing is just like the absolute shittiest thing you could do in this environment, right? One of the things that struck me about these series of events was, at the time, the internet was like this really ironic place. This is like peak irony, right? This is an environment where nothing really means anything on the internet. We were all testing out the limits of like what you could say and do and speak to on the internet. The defining concept on the internet at the time was irony, right? So when a bunch of white students step into a environment where they don't see any black students, and the predominating culture is one that is steeped in irony, it almost feels like, I mean, this series of events just seems like the kind of thing that happens when you have a vacuum of black people in any kind of space, right? Where it almost like turns itself inside out and students kind of just do racist things. So all of this is horrible. This is the environment that I was in when I'm searching for some kind of context and community around the musical things that I wanted to do on campus at the time, right? The university responded with this like teach-in that they decided to do. It was kind of the same like DEI like bullshit thing that any big organization tries to do after they're faced with some big racist event. And from what I remember, a bunch of students walked out, and a bunch of people essentially held a protest for the university administration to do more around and making sure that black students were accepted and encouraged in the university setting. All of this stuff was so bad that it got its own like Wikipedia page on that was talking about like what happened. When I think about the fact that all of this stuff happened while I was a student at UCSD, and trying to reconcile that with me like desperately looking for any kind of community or any kind of like culture around music that wasn't based on like white people EDM stuff, right? I think that Blacktronica as a course and this experience represents all the growth in the world, and yet I want it to be more, right? I it's really interesting how things change and how things stay the same. Where Blacktronica is the kind of course that I would have killed for when I was a student at UCSD. It would have been everything to me. It would have been like, oh, I'm getting steeped in the traditions and culture of black music and thinking about how it informs all of music, right? And I'm going through this process right now, reading through Assembling About a Black Counterculture, and thinking about techno, thinking about its roots in Detroit and all of that stuff, and doing my own reckoning with appropriating this stuff in the past, right? And just kind of borrowing from it wholesale without really thinking about the history behind it, right? It would have set me in a completely different direction, I think. It would have like kind of kickstarted my culture or my creative practice in a way that would have helped a lot, and would have enmeshed me in all these different communities and helped me kind of get to where I want to go now back then. But you know, it's not enough. And this is no offense or diss or anything. No shade to King Britt and all of the work that he's done on this course, and no shade to the students or anything. Right? This course is a miracle. It's a gift. I love that it exists, and yet I don't think it's enough. I think it needs to be more. You know, the club experience itself was great, and I would have gone, 10 times over, but it was interesting that it was situated on the same day as Horizon, which is essentially it's called like a mini Sun God. And Sun God is essentially like a mini Coachella for UCSD. So, Horizon was this, I saw this huge line for the event coming out of one of the fields on the East Campus, and it probably isn't deliberately, but this event is being situated next to this like really big event where a bunch of like indie rock bands that I've never heard of are playing, and it's like way more popular than this DJ set that's standing in for as a monument to black music and all of the contributions that black people have made to music, right? When you think about where we've come from the time I was a student, when we had students literally throwing racist parties and using the N-word on public access TV, I would call that progress, right? I'd call this event progress, obviously. But when we think about it in relation to what is still happening at UC San Diego, right? And in the UC system as a whole, right? It's not just UC San Diego. the UC system as a whole is being rocked with these like allegations of mistreatment of its graduate students and its essentially grad and student workers being underpaid and not making enough money off of their graduate student work to even afford to live in the areas that they're going to college, right? The problems have changed, right? I think a class like this is 100% progress, right? It is better that we have this class on campus right now than if we didn't have this class. That said, I want it way more, right? I want way more of all of this stuff, and I feel like UC San Diego has the capacity to make it way more, right? I feel like San Diego as a whole has the capacity to make all of this more, right? And so what I want to do with this video is kind of like situate us in the context that I was in when I was a student, right? I felt relatively insulated from a lot of the racial issues that were happening at UCSD because there were so many Asian people at the campus that that I never really felt like I didn't belong. And then because there was so little talk and tradition around speaking around racial injustice and making sure that we're doing right by our minority students, right? There wasn't that much of that happening at the time. So I feel like a lot of students around me were just kind of, even when the events were happening, were just kind of treating this with like, I mean, it seems bad, but like, why, but it's not that bad, right? I even had like a couple of friends, like I got into like a little argument with one of them about like, it's not that big of a deal. And so, I want to situate us in that experience when we talk about this class and in this event, right? And say, yes, this is obviously progress, right? But when we take into account the Afrofuturist perspective of the class, I just feel like Afrofuturism promises these futures that are so much more vibrant and interesting than the future that we are faced with now. There's just this like vividness to the visions of the future that a lot of Afrofuturist works present, and I think that what Blacktronica is important for is showing that, yes, we've done something here, right? The fact that this course exists is progress, and the fact that this archive of interviews exists is progress. But I think when we take the Afrofuturist perspective into account, this isn't just about our future, it's about like the multitude of futures that Black people contribute to and envision, right? So that's why I feel like this event and this class and this whole thing is not just a celebration of the event, which I thought was really cool. I would have liked to see more of it if my kid wasn't going to bed so early. But I want you to feel like you want more of this when you're done watching this video, right? Because as much progress as this is, I feel like we can still do better. We can always do better. And when you really take into account the visions of the future that Afrofuturist works really provide, you can't help but be inspired. You can't help but be energized and think, I want to see this stuff manifest, right? I want to see these futures manifest. So yeah, that's kind of what this video is about. Hopefully this wasn't too hand wavy. So yeah, that's this video. Still working on those track breakdowns, and I'll get to those very soon. We'll actually start working on M8 stuff. But I just wanted to talk on this. I think it's important. I thought the event was cool. And I do want this channel to not just be somewhere where you get tips about how to make things on the M8 tracker and how to make music, but also as a kind of like document of the things and events that I go to in San Diego, that's one of the things I wished I did more when I was a student, and when I was like doing these shows, is I wished I had more of a document of all of these things. So yeah, I hope that this was interesting to you, and there's definitely going to be more of this kind of thing on the channel, provided I have time to go to these events. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe as usual. Leave comments if you are interested in my perspectives or anything. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. And I'm gonna put Paprika down so she can go bark at dogs.